Hello, my name is Alec Stapp. I'm the Director of Technology Policy at the Progressive Policy Institute. We're a moderate center-left think tank based in Washington, D.C. We are pleased to host this event today with the Colorado Business Roundtable and the Colorado Technology Association. We're going to discuss the role that technology platforms and digital tools have played in empowering Colorado businesses and supporting the state's economic recovery, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll also discuss the need for elected officials to recognize and promote continued economic development and investment in Colorado, spurred by the technology sector, in addition to preserving the accessibility and affordability of critical digital platforms that have allowed the state's small business community to maintain operations during the pandemic. First, we're going to start off with a keynote address by Betsy Markey, who is the Executive Director of the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Betsy was appointed by Governor Jared Polis to his cabinet in January 2019. Previously, Betsy was elected to the U.S. Congress in 2008 from Colorado's 4th Congressional District. She has worked in 4 federal agencies, the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the Department of State, and most recently as an Assistant Secretary in the Department of Homeland Security as the Regional Administrator for the Small Business Administration. In the late 1980s, Betsy and her husband launched a successful technology company, Syscom Services. The firm has been ranked in the Inc. 500 listing of America's fastest growing private companies. And she's also owned and later sold a coffee ice cream shop in Fort Collins called Huckleberries. Now I'll hand it off to Betsy. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you, Alec, and I'm pleased to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for participating in this important discussion about the role technology plays during the pandemic and in Colorado's economic recovery. So 2020 is really quite a year, isn't it? And I do have to say technology has played a pivotal role in enabling wide-scale public health action to fight the pandemic, from being able to work remotely to the state's COVID exposure notification app. Technology certainly has helped in our economic recovery. And you'll hear later from Frannie Matthews with Colorado Technology Association and Debbie Brown with Colorado Business Roundtable, who we work closely together to talk a little bit about technology's role in Colorado. But I will say for in the past 2 years alone, we have attracted 18 technology companies to the state, from companies such as Checkers, which relocated to Colorado last year from the Bay Area. They have a background security application, and they decided to come to Colorado because, number one, our business-friendly atmosphere, our workforce, but also our progressive stance on issues such as social justice. They are committed to hiring 1/3 of their workforce from people who have had prior convictions. To companies like InFocus, also a California company that relocated many of their employees to rural Colorado because we are really promoting remote work in Colorado, particularly remote work in more rural parts of the state, and providing some incentives for companies to do that. In fact, we have, in the companies such as Netflix, Apple, Google, IBM have all made significant investments in Colorado. In total, we've got about 11,000 technology companies here in the state, employing almost 146,000 people in good, high-paying jobs. But I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of this sector to Colorado with a brief slide presentation. So if we could just put up that first slide. So a couple of, I think, really interesting statistics. Colorado ranks number 2 on the State Technology and Science Index. We are the 3rd fastest growing employer of technology jobs in the country. And this sector has a $50 billion economic impact. In fact, the Colorado technology sector makes up about 14% of our state's economy, so hugely important for Colorado. Next slide. So some of the things in Colorado that we like to brag about, Boulder was just ranked the #1 tech hub in the country. beating out places like San Francisco, Boston, and Seattle. We have the second most educated workforce in the country after Massachusetts. I think they've got a lot more universities than we do, but we are number 2. We are the number 4 in the US for the number of employees who are employed in the technology sector, with over 10.5 of our workforce here in the state working in the technology field. And then we've got a diverse workforce. In fact, over 50,000 people come to Colorado every year. That's our net in-migration of workforce. In fact, we rank number 3 among our peers for individuals who come to the state with a bachelor degree or higher. And I want to talk a little bit about remote work. Prior to COVID, we launched what was called the Location Neutral Employment Program. We know that we have great talent throughout Colorado, not just on the Front Range, and we wanted to make sure that a lot of people, for quality of life reasons, and now that we've got great broadband throughout the state, want to work in a more rural part of the state and parts of the state that could use that economic development. So we have been pushing remote work for quite a while, and I do have to say that remote work has also been the ability to work remotely, and particularly in the technology sector, positions us well for recovery. Next slide. A little bit about some of our market competitiveness in the technology sector. We see growing diversity among our firms here in Colorado. We are competitive in terms of our cost of living, certainly compared to major cities on the East Coast. And in fact, our talent and availability of the housing market puts us in a good spot for market maturity. And we also, like to say that, in terms of travel and connectivity, actually, I believe that's on, I do want to say that in terms of our corporate tax ranking, we're number 10. So, 10 out of 50 is pretty good in terms of how business friendly and what our corporate tax rate looks like. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about our travel and connectivity. Because we are centered in the country, we talk about, Colorado being the new gateway to the U.S., particularly for international markets. I think they have seen, the West Coast and the East Coast as ports of entry, but we are well situated. We're within 4 hours of air travel to either East or West Coast. And then our mountain time zone allows us for same-day communications with our strategic international partners in Europe and South America and in many parts of Asia and the Pacific. We've got a great airport in DIA. In fact, it's the fifth busiest airport in the country. And I think that may be the end of my slides, I do believe. But I want to talk about just one other program that I think is really important for Colorado and for our technology sector. And in thinking over a decade ago of how Colorado was going to emerge from the Great Recession, a program that we put into place was called our Advanced Industry Program. And that is to really support those early stage companies, those companies that are coming out of technology transfer from university with some seed money. So we created the Advanced Industry Grant Program to provide grants to sectors of the economy that we know are growing and providing good paying jobs. That includes, of course, number 1 being technology and information, but also we have strengths in advanced manufacturing, biosciences, aerospace, electronics, energy and natural resources, engineering and infrastructure. And of course, all of these industries rely on the latest technology to grow and remain competitive. So we're excited about the future in Colorado. I think we are well positioned to capture even more growth in the technology field. And I appreciate your being on. I'm looking forward to hearing from the other small businesses and from our other panelists as well. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you very much, Betsy. That was wonderful. I now have a little more insight into why all of my friends are trying to move to Colorado, and why I keep reading about venture capitalists, entrepreneurs from San Francisco and the Bay Area who are moving to Colorado as well. Sounds like you guys have a lot going for you in the tech sector and the overall environment. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move to panel 1. So we're going to have a conversation with Colorado small business owners. So we have Kat Aledo and Tracy McKenna. They can turn their video on. Perfect. And then I'll introduce both of you. So Kat, I'll start with you. So Kat Aledo is the GM of Sales and Operations at Digizuck. Kat handles sales and overseas production, logistics, and corporate event operations, an area in which she has thrived for more than 15 years. It's based in Denver. Digizuck builds and hosts virtual event series, digital trade shows and showrooms, 3D exhibits, and live video streaming events. And then our second panelist today is Tracy McKenna, founder and owner of Lion Events LLC. Lion Events has been in 2015, where she organizes large and small events for a variety of clients from the Denver arts community, healthcare industry, and banking industry. Prior to forming her own business, she was the events manager for the Denver Art Museum and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. She uses technology internally to coordinate all logistics of event planning. As a mother working from home, tech tools are essential for managing her own business and helping her children learn. Kat, Tracy, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Alec.
Great. So I think we'll just, I want to get both of your perspectives on various questions. So I'll ask the same question to both of you and we can get answers in turn. So Kat, I'll just start with you for the first one, but it'll be a question to both of you. So could you just provide a little background on your business, the story of your business?
So DigiZoop provides videos and streaming experiences with the goal of engaging online audiences and then taking that a step further to inspire action. And so it was an interesting kind of fast forward that took place for us in March. So we were a niche company. We are now a niche company, but born out of about 2 decades of multimedia services and live event production. And so when lockdown happened, it was very obvious immediately to us that we were going to put all of our resources into building out the components of our business that we had already had in place, but trying to mold them together really to serve the business community, our clients, the current and past clients, as well as people we knew we were about to meet, because of the need for everyone to get online so quickly and stay engaged with their constituency, their, it could be their consumers, it could be their employees. We knew it was going to take a lot of different shapes and forms, but that they were going to need people on their team to help them both creatively as well as technically to get the job done.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. Tracy, same question to you. What's the story of your business?
The story of my business, Lion Events was born about 5 years ago. I have been in the event industry for about 20 years now. And prior to Lion Events, I was in-house at some of the larger nonprofits that you mentioned, and some additional ones as well. And so really had this perspective of fundraising, but from an event perspective that also fits within a development or fundraising department. And so I realized that I was ready to kind of go out on my own and try this and do it with, I definitely work primarily in the nonprofit sector, although not entirely. But really there's a niche there that is not the tier 1 SCFD organizations, but kind of the next levels down, that they have these wonderful events that they plan and that people look forward to coming to every year, but they don't have the staff to help actually make those happen. So that's where I can step in and really help them. And so that has been a lot of fun, meeting a lot of wonderful people in our community on the Front Range here. And I now am, kind of using people just like Kat and Digizuck for my clients. So it's kind of an interesting combination to have the two of us here right now, because my planning is kind of going to looking at people just like Kat to give us the expertise that clients need to adapt to this new environment.
Yeah, I love the complementarity there, and it definitely can see how your businesses work together. And so, Kat, could you just talk a little bit about the importance of the online environment to your business and the tools you use to be successful?
It's kind of like the chicken and the egg a little bit. It really is. The online environment is one and the same. For us, I think, and I think I have this unique kind of meta perspective, because I can speak to it as how it's helped our company, but how it's helped our company is really how it's helped our clients. And so, because we were a video production company, being able to have such a deep team of multimedia service providers and tech and gear and all the things that go along with that, we were really ahead of the game for the most part when everything started. But we really, I would say the first few months, especially my job, had a lot to do with bringing our clients up to speed, is the education component as to, how do you translate a live event into a virtual experience? How do you define your audience? Where do your constituents consume media? What do you need from an online platform? Is this something that's easily managed in-house on Zoom and you just need to get everybody the link? Or is this something that takes one of the more complex platforms because we want to manage networking? We want to be able to sell virtual booth space, all sorts of different things. So really, for us, the online environment has provided a deepening of relationships, because we've become the experts on different teams. So when we first meet a client, or even with the people we've known prior, is we really have to, or it feels like a true objective of ours is to understand what the culture is like, the objectives of this event compared to this event, or this sales meeting compared to that sales meeting, and to be able to translate that into a virtual event run of show on the right technology platform, and then to be able to kind of guide the creative process, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to bring our ballroom experience online. We are different attention spans and so forth, as well as, wanting to be able to, everyone's competing for everybody's online attention, and we can't just be one and the same. It's important to be beyond that and above that. And so the education process has been a fun part. And also too, it's something that we're a part of. We're building the bridge as we cross it. We just happen to have the technical know-how in our back pocket already. And the tools are as varied as our clients' needs are. So again, there's so many amazing platforms out there. Some are huge and some are simple, and connecting the right client with the right platform is important, and then running it for them as well.
That's great. And Tracy, Kat just gave us a nice kind of point to think of it as, like, you can't bring a ballroom event and just turn that online. You have to adapt for the environment. And so I'm curious, like, your business primarily before COVID was a physical in-person events-based business. And so pre-COVID, how was the online environment relevant to your business, and did you use any digital tools to make your business successful? And then how's that shifted in the last 9 months?
Yeah. It's been really drastic, as I'm sure most people can imagine, in particular for the event industry. It's been a huge shift. We pre-COVID, being an independent contractor, of course, I'm using, basic technology for every day, as far as, sharing tools, and the more sophisticated thing that I would use technology for pre-COVID and still today is working with auction companies to do online auctions. And that can be anything from, depending on the client, anything from a very sophisticated product that has all the bells and whistles to something that's a free product for a nonprofit like a school. I've done my kids' fundraisers for school that way. So, that's been a big piece of technology in how events run, and tracking donations and, appeals during the events. And since then, it has really changed, obviously, to exactly what Kat is talking about, where we are kind of, I see it's been a very interesting evolution with COVID, and how I have seen it go is, I had clients that had events. Spring is a very busy time for fundraisers. So obviously March, when we were all shut down, we had been planning for months for events that were about to happen. So what we did is we basically turned those events that had been planned, and I'm sure you all have attended these at one point, into a digital event, and started realizing that it doesn't really transfer. But at that point, it was an emergency situation because it was happening, and this is how we were going to do it. That was kind of round one of the evolution. The next wave that kind of came was that people had already budgeted and had some of my clients had taken their events that were in the spring and pushed them out to fall, thinking, well, surely we'll be ready by fall. And so those events were starting to be planned again, then realized that this summer that wasn't going to happen, and as an in-person event. And so really tailoring and working with somebody like Kat to come up with an event that is completely online. So you're not trying to make it the gala in the ballroom. You are now trying to make it a very put together, cohesive experience for the guests. And it's been, as Kat said, very exciting to see because it's kind of new territory. So it's very creative. I think everybody has learned a lot of what works and what doesn't. And in particular, how live aspects just do not translate well into that realm. I had read somewhere that I think with online events that you really need to kind of have that morning talk show feel to it to keep it very casual and friendly and not as formal as what we expect necessarily at a gala that we would go attend. So that's been a really interesting evolution, and we can talk later too about what we see as the future, because I think at this point we're getting a little bit. There's a lot of online things going. And so I think there will be this time when people are ready to be together, certainly, but I think it will be forever changed. And we can talk about that at another time.
And I'm really excited to talk about the future of this industry and what tech means for it. Before we get to that, Kat, I just want to get your perspective for your business. I know that you guys are primarily a digital run business, a virtual events platform first, or helping people do virtual events. And so when the pandemic hit, how did that impact your business, and how did you adapt? If you had to adapt at all, because you were kind of primed for this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the adaptation came just with our commitment. So other projects that naturally fell away because of the pandemic and certain things closing, doors closed here, opened here. And so we just said, this is where we see our need. And in that, and it is really great that Tracy and I get to be talking about this together. One of the things that floated to the top immediately was this fundraiser component, and has absolutely become the most rewarding piece of the puzzle, is to be able to work with nonprofits that historically have, kind of the basic staff to run everything soup to nuts, and just to feel like we can come in and consult and deliver on a fundraising event is huge, because, and there's been some really positive things out of it, is not only are they able to do their auctions and raise their money, but what we found too is with this, the online version of their fundraisers, is the accessibility that they just didn't have before. You were either limited by budget to how many people you could fit in X, Y, and feed and give drinks to in this room, which would eliminate a certain number of people on both ends of the spectrum who you could invite, but who could also accept an invite and pay to get there. We've also noticed that now with our larger audience, the content that we're sharing, we're able to do much more storytelling, video components, whether we're digging into the archives and pulling up history of the organization and how it's come along, or, being part of some events and being able to capture footage and talk to the beneficiaries and be able to tell the stories. We've had feedback where it said, oh God, man, I've been coming to your gala for years, but I never really understood what it was that you did. But through the video components and through the deeper storytelling, knowing we needed to engage this online audience, we found that more donations came in. We found that there became more connection. Kids could go to these fundraisers. In addition, there is also now evergreen content. So now we're able to replay the show afterwards. We're able to pull out pieces and do promoting around each various component to, for instance, for Colorado Gives Day, a lot of our clients replayed their fundraisers as part of that. So we, I don't know if we adapted. I think it felt like we were creating in the moment. It was very present moment driven. And I have to say, I mean, the conversations we had in March, our clients are much more savvy now. And now we're just keeping driving the conversation, and we're already looking to 2021. And to Tracy's point, I'd love to hear her take on this too, is just how we're going to now be writing scripts and run a shows for a hybrid event. And that's going to look different than what it was live, than what it was 100% online, to what it is going to be as we're engaging, a room and a digital audience. So it's a constant adaptation, client to client, day to day.
Definitely, yeah. And I'm excited. Let's talk more about the future. So we have a vaccine coming imminently. So hopefully by spring, or if not summer next year, we'll be able to have safe in-person events again. But Tracy, if we just talk for a second about what you think the future of events is. So is it going to be back fully mostly to in-person events? Is it the momentum and inertia be like we're staying with the online mostly, hybrid events, a little bit of each? How do you think you're going to run your business, and where do you see this going?
I think that we're going to be at the point where it's going to become an expectation that there's a hybrid now, that there's not, I think that people will certainly want the in-person aspect of some. I mean, the thing about events, and I say this very frankly to all of my clients, is that a live event is not the most inexpensive way to raise money. Is it effective? Yes. And it's a great kind of PR tool, but it's not, it's also there's a lot of overhead. There's the ballroom. I mean, the list goes on, the food, the drinks. And so this is a really interesting crossroads, I think, for the event industry to figure out how to make it successful both ways, but not be everything to everyone. And another thing I always talk to my clients about is their personality as an organization is the most important piece of an event. And so adapting that through in-person and technology, I think, is going to be the future of how things are successful. Everybody's going to be trying to do something. So being true to who the organization is going to make it the most successful. And for some organizations, depending on who it is, it might be 100% virtual because they had a success this year and they want to continue that. But there also might be a component to really bring people together again. And I think my prediction is in the beginning, people will really be hungry to gather again, as a human nature to be together. So I definitely see that as an important piece of this recovery as well. Kat, I'd love your thoughts too on your vision of the future.
I can't wait.
Not just in events. We don't have to only talk about
No, I agree. It is absolutely hybrid. And I'm hoping to maybe innovate a name other than hybrid. I think it's going to become its own thing. It's not just going to be a blend of this and that. It's going to become its own, who we are. And I do agree that hunger is there. I also feel myself personally, I feel like I have really enjoyed online community in a different way. So I feel myself as a consumer, as a member of different organizations and online groups, I've really felt myself shift and expand. So I actually don't know what's going to come, but I feel enthusiastic about it. I think that if we're just, taking out the good, the bad, and the ugly of how things have unfolded in 2020, I probably am excited more than anything of what I've seen change, and how that on a core level, sometimes you need to just break the system down to build something better. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are.
I would agree with that.
I think on that note, it's a great note to end it on, that we're building something better. And so I'm optimistic about the future as well. And I think we learned a lot from your businesses and your guys' stories. So thank you very much for joining us, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And now we will move on to panel number 2 for the event. So now we're going to have a conversation on economic development, technology, and policy. So my 2 panelists for this part of the event are Debbie Brown and Frannie Matthews. So if you two could, there we go, perfect, seamless. Okay, so to introduce our panelists, I'll start with Debbie. Debbie Brown is the president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, where she works with the state's largest employers to strengthen the state's economic vitality and improve the business climate in Colorado. Previously, Debbie was the president and founder of Amplify Strategies, a strategic communications and public policy consulting firm. She's been featured as a political strategist in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Fox News, Washington Post, and others. And our second panelist is Frannie Matthews, president and CEO of the Colorado Technology Association. Prior to joining CTA, Frannie spent 18 years with IBM and served as the IBM Senior Location Executive for Denver. She has over 10 years of sales management and leadership experience with regional high-performance teams. Industry verticals have included higher education, state and local, healthcare, and telecommunications. Governor John Hickenlooper appointed her to the Colorado Workforce Development Council. Debbie and Frannie, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here.
Okay, so we'll do a similar format to the previous panel where I'll ask a question and try to get both of your perspectives on it. And so, Debbie, I'll just start with you for the first one. Can you speak to the business climate in Colorado and how business leaders like yourself are working to promote an entrepreneurial, innovative environment that attracts investment and kind of lifts up small businesses?
You bet. Great to be with all of you today. And I'll probably just play off of some of the remarks from Betsy Markey, because she really painted such a great picture of Colorado in terms of our economic strength, particularly pre-COVID. U.S. News and World Report had actually ranked us the #1 economy, based on lots of different metrics. And as Betsy explained, we really are, a state that is growing and thriving economically, in large part because of the work Betsy's office does as well to try to bring new businesses to Colorado and help the ones that are here continually be able to innovate and thrive. So I kind of second that Colorado is a great place to not only visit, but a great place to bring your business. In terms of economic, what's happened since COVID, certainly we've had disruption in terms of, a global pandemic, of course, has created some disruption in the business environment in terms of everything from employee safety, community safety, understanding, what customers are going to need in a new environment, everything from supply chains, you name it, that businesses have had to lean into to really understand this new global pandemic. And then what's obvious is there's obviously a business disruption as well that runs parallel in terms of businesses being closed or being limited in their ability to grow and thrive during this time. We can go into some of the details on that, but I think we're optimistic as a business community that we're going to come out of this recovery really strong. The vaccine is the ultimate stimulus, no matter what else is coming from the state or the federal government. The vaccine and the optimism around our bioscience community will be really the engine that helps businesses restart with gusto, hopefully in the spring of 2021. So Colorado's positioned really strong because we started strong. And I think, like I said, there's optimism, particularly in some of our key industry sectors. Of course, some industries are going to, recover at a slower pace, particularly travel and hospitality. But we're optimistic that in general, Colorado's in a great position.
And I like your vaccine is the ultimate stimulus. That's a great line. And I think one thing we at PPI, we've advocated for one more fiscal relief package. So we think we can get one more relief package through the door. We can actually bridge businesses and individuals to the end of this towards that vaccine, so we can get to the actually ramping up with rapid growth. And so far we've seen, obviously, home prices have been level or increasing. Stock market's held up well. The CARES Act did a lot for the unemployed and for small businesses, but we're reaching the point where those things are kind of falling apart and getting creaky. And so I'm with you that the vaccine is the ultimate stimulus. We just need to get there. And I hope we all can do that. And so, Frannie, I'd just love to get your opinion on this in terms of how leaders like yourself are working to promote an entrepreneurial and innovative environment in Colorado.
Yeah, and I would agree with you that just a little more stimulus is going to make a big difference on the gap, on bridging that. And I do think that we are on the edge. We just need to hold on a little bit longer. Exactly. And the nice thing that I'm seeing is that Coloradoans are pretty respectful of doing the right thing to not spread the virus. So we until recently have been really doing quite well. Just in general, tech has done pretty well through this. We did a survey in the summer and found that 22% of our members that responded actually have had an uptick in business. And what we absolutely saw was a the heroics of the tech community within their businesses. So most technologists had a work from home kind of environment. And so when the pandemic hit in March, what they needed to do was take business units there. And so we saw companies pivot really quickly into a work and home environment and step up to the challenges of that. There's some, unique things like, well, cybersecurity is certainly one, privacy issues, simple things like you've now got somebody with a printer that could be printing off, private information that they have to, just redo everything. So I saw amazing things happen with keeping businesses running, but I also saw amazing things happen with technology leading for the new solutions. I loved the conversation with Kat and Tracy because there was neither of you said, oh darn, we're going to go wait. And that's what we have seen and we've promoted as leaders. This is not waiting. This is embrace the situation now and go after it with gusto and with the intention that we will innovate and we're going to come out of this in a better position than we were when we went in.
I think that's a great point. And I think I probably left that out of my comments accidentally of like, one of the most important factors is how businesses themselves have adapted and said, we're not going to wait to get bailed out or get help. We're going to do as much as we can for our business, our employees, our customers. And it's really been inspiring to see. And so I think next we'll talk about today's digital infrastructure. And so Debbie, if you could just talk about how companies that make up that digital infrastructure, it's the Microsoft, Twitter, Facebook, Google's, how they change the landscape for economic growth for small business in Colorado and the economy at large.
Sure. And before I jump into that, I might piggyback on what Frannie said. I think, especially in light of recovery, maybe, I don't know what it's like in every part of the country, but Coloradans are pretty feisty and innovative. And especially, like you said, the two small business owners that we saw, disruption brings challenges, but disruption brings opportunity. And I think a lot of companies that aren't necessarily tech companies are leaning into that disruption as far as the opportunity piece of that. Some of our partners, are in the broadband business, for example. They can't be busier in trying to solve broadband infrastructure because if people don't have that capability, then they aren't able to access the platforms and the other tools, now that they're needing to work from home and learn from home. So to your point, Alec, I think it's interesting how everybody, is leaning into technology more than ever before because, it's at a time of disruption, that's where the opportunity lies. So to your point about platforms, I think we've seen a lot of that shift with some of the larger businesses. And of course, we're all in an ecosystem that affect everybody. Large businesses depend on small businesses and vice versa. So we've seen a lot of that leaning in from everything from broadband, telehealth, lots of different industry sectors that are relying more on some of these technologies and platforms to make their business run successfully.
That's great. Yeah, I think we've been talking about the pivot towards tech or how tech companies themselves have pivoted. And personally, one of the things I've noticed of the pandemic is that I look through the news and I see whenever the big tech companies are announcing like work from home date just got pushed back to X, I'm like, probably my work from home date also just got pushed back to X. And in a few months, I'm going to hear about this as well. So they've really been kind of bellwethers, I think, for a lot of companies and other parts of the economy. And so, Frannie, can you just talk as well about the digital, how are you thinking about the digital infrastructure, especially during this time?
Yeah, kind of to Debbie's point, I look at the larger tech employers as anchor stores, and it's kind of important for our ecosystem. From a digital infrastructure, broadband across our state is critically important, and we've got a governor who is very dedicated to making sure that the broadband build out is happening and that people have accessibility across the state. I think that's important. What I also like about, what our kind of ecosystem looks like is that we've got strength in small, medium, and large in Colorado. And it's important that we don't take our foot off the accelerator to attract more, because even though, the gating factor is in any metropolitan area certainly is talent. So we need to attract more opportunities for more talent to come here, and then, vice versa. So you got two accelerators you're just pushing on. And we're excited about the growth. Growth in technology brings very high paying jobs. It's good for our economy, and it's good for our social ecosystem. So I'm pretty excited about, just the prospects of everything that's going on in tech prior to the pandemic and how we've stepped up during the pandemic.
Well, Frannie, I really like your analogy there of saying that the large tech players are kind of the anchor stores for this entire ecosystem, but you need small, medium, and large as well. And so, Debbie, I'll just ask you to talk more about this, Debbie, about like how you think of investments made in Colorado by large tech companies. I'm thinking of everything from data centers to fulfillment centers to office locations. How does that relate to economic development in the state?
Well, I like that too, Frannie. I'm going to steal that, anchor stores. That's an interesting concept. And a lot of the partners that we have are those kind of big anchor stores, the big some bigger employers. And those investments, I think, do create sort of this concept of industry clusters and talent clusters, that when you look at how do we grow effectively, you kind of see these corridors where success breeds more success. I'll use the example of, aerospace in Colorado. Colorado is the largest aerospace employer per capita in the United States, which you might not realize. But what that brings, we're second to California if you think about population, but Colorado is a big aerospace hub, which is very reliant, of course, on technology and, a technological leader. But talent lends itself to more talent. Industry clusters bring more clusters. And I think the same is with just the technology field in general. So some of these big companies that are investing in Colorado and bringing talent and investing in our higher education, investing in skills-based jobs development, and investing in all these different areas, I think it just gets more excitement for the state. As Betsy might have alluded to, Betsy Markey, we work very closely with Betsy's team at OEdit. And what's exciting is they're busier than ever. When companies are moving to Colorado, it kind of breeds that extra excitement. So we're in a really good position as far as an economic development situation.
That's great. And Debbie, I really like that you emphasize clusters and technological corridors. I'm going to take the opportunity to make a shameless plug for the blog that PPI runs. So we run a blog called Agglomerations, my colleagues and I, for all of our tech and innovation focused work. And the reason we decided to call it Agglomerations is because we think this is the most important phenomenon related to tech and innovation. This exactly relates to what you said about clusters and technological corridors. It's about how there are positive spillovers between businesses, small and large, government investment and promotion of economic activity, and universities in particular. And so you kind of need all those things to be firing on all cylinders to really get the most innovation or the most rapid growth. And so I really like that you really emphasize that.
And if I could add a shameless plug as well?
Please, all the plugs you want.
So Colorado Business Roundtable, that's really what we believe in. We call it the ABCG. We coordinate with academia, business, community, and government. And we feel like that mixture of collaboration and convening is incredibly powerful. It's not just the business community. It's how do we all work together to ensure Colorado's economic future is bright. And we're actually launching tomorrow a Road to Recovery initiative that I'm happy to, if people want to go to our website, cobrt.com, they can find out more. But it talks about a lot of these issues where we've brought the private sector in with government and academia to actually talk about these issues regarding economic recovery. And we've got some important pillars that certainly relate to technology as well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned community there, because I think I left that out because I work for a nonprofit think tank. So I think they would like me to include the fact that, nonprofits and NGOs and community-oriented organizations are really important as well. And so, Frannie, do you have a comment, Frannie?
I was just going to say, it's one thing that we talk about locally about Colorado, is that we have an amazing culture of collaboration in Colorado. That I've worked outside of Colorado and came back and been thrilled to be in this environment, because you can make 2 telephone calls and get stuff done. So it feels, it's a big market with a small town feel. Debbie and I work together all the time. And it's just a great ecosystem of collaboration.
That's great to hear. And so I think for the last part of this conversation, I'm going to pivot us a little bit to talk about technology and the big national spotlight that we're seeing all today. So it's tech's under a microscope. There are heated policy debates in DC and around the country. I think today the big news was that Facebook's been sued by state attorneys general and the FTC. This is an ongoing thing that's part of like a tech clash or just increased scrutiny of the tech industry. And so I'd like to get both of your perspectives on, as these conversations continue among lawmakers and policymakers, what do you think is missing from that conversation about the nature and role of technology in today's economy? And so, Debbie, I'll just start with you.
Sure, happy to weigh in on that. Our organization handles policy from more of a big picture perspective. So I might punt over to Frannie as far as the specifics around technology policy at the federal level. Most of our work is really around, particularly this year around federal stimulus recommendations, how COVID is impacting, again, the business community. And we tend to work on issues regarding tax and regulatory structure that's relevant to all businesses. So happy to answer any questions on that. But I think our default position, we definitely are supportive of the free market, want to see businesses of all sizes grow and thrive. And we tend to see less government as being more of a catalyst for long-term business growth, again, for businesses of all sizes. As it relates to particulars regarding technology, though, I'll defer to Frannie.
Okay.
Sounds great. Frannie, give us the answers on technology.
It's moving fast. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges in this is it's moving faster than regulators can keep up on. And so it's very difficult. We, like Debbie said, we want, what's good for business and what's good for tech in a responsible way. So the market is a great way to, provide for the consumer, provide for business to business. And if we can have that mechanism work fairly, that's the best thing for us. I think it's interesting because we have some big things coming down the pike. Privacy is a huge issue. And managing if there is a breach, how that works. We've seen very onerous regulation outside of the US that, we should learn lessons from. And then we've also seen state legislation coming down because there hasn't been federal legislation. So, I think we need to be thinking along what's smart. We need to be paying attention to unintended consequences. And we need to pay attention to regulation being evergreen because things move so quickly. And I think, the new frontiers like AI and having some level of transparency in AI and algorithms so that we don't see behind the scenes a big bifurcation of, fairness. And so there's a lot of issues that it needs to be thoughtful and, we need expertise in the areas of regulation.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up privacy regulation because I've written a lot on GDPR, the EU privacy law, and CCPA, the California privacy law that was passed. And I think you're spot on in terms of we need to learn what they did wrong as we try to implement our own federal comprehensive privacy solution because we need to do something, but they've made a lot of mistakes along the way that we can definitely improve on with new legislation. And so with that, I would like to wrap up. So Debbie and Frannie, thank you very much for taking the time today and for sharing your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And so with that, that second panel, that's the end of the event. So I just want to thank everyone in our audience today for joining us. I think it was a great discussion focused on Colorado business and technology and where it's going, what's happened during the pandemic. And so I thank all of our panelists, our partners in hosting this event, and thank you all for joining us. Take care.